Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics. This is the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug. I'm publisher of the Center Square. Everyday Economics is brought to you by the Center Square. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording this episode on Friday, February 21st. And joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, you and I were talking about show ideas this week, and you were like, hey, we should do something on fuzzy math. And there's an interesting thing that came out yesterday, and I wanted to talk about it. And it was about DOGE savings, right? So White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, who I think is he's outstanding in front of the microphone. Like he's just... And he's clear, he's concise, and he's got this sort of like relentlessness that I just appreciate it. He's straightforward, right? And so anyway, he floated this idea of the DOGE savings. So the money from the Department of Government Efficiency, all the savings that we would be creating by cutting federal programs, part of it being returned to the American taxpayers. Part of it going to pay down the federal debt, which is massive. I mean, it's I don't know, what is it, 36.2 trillion or something like that. And then the 60% that remained would be added to next year's budget. Basically, and I don't want to get the terminology wrong, and I don't want to misspeak here. Not as a credit, but it would be carried over into the next budget year, and therefore cancel out the requirement of taxation coming in otherwise, whatever that amount might be. And I'm not clear that, we're only a month into this administration. I mean, for people that are out there that have been like actually kind of paying attention to what's going on in government, they might think that Donald Trump's been president for like months or maybe a year. He's only been president for a month. It's just there's been a lot going on.
It's been bananas. That's for sure.
There's
lots going on, man.
All right. So the fuzzy math is what you wanted to call this episode. Talk to me about fuzzy math.
Yeah, no, totally. I saw this really interesting article in Bloomberg with a quote from Allison, who's a economic policy expert from the Manhattan Institute. And look, and it talked about, it was entitled Fuzzy Math. And it said, President Donald Trump is throwing his support behind a House budget plan that would include a $4.5 trillion tax cut. Mm-hmm. I love tax cuts. I'm doing my taxes this week. I think a lot of you are dealing with taxes.
Yeah. It's tax time.
I love tax cuts. But here's the catch. That number should raise some eyebrows amid concerns about U.S. massive debt and deficits. But the Trump administration, the Trump government insists that we can deliver tax cuts and meaningful deficit reductions simultaneously. Mm-hmm. No trade-offs necessary.
You're quoting from that.
I'm just reading this article. I'm not, this is not my opinion. This is just, right. I'm reading this article. And Allison wrote, none of this is likely. And here's what she says. Yes, the government needs to cut waste and excessive regulations, and some tax cuts will boost growth. We agree there. But even in the best case scenario, the added growth wouldn't be enough to make them pay for themselves, let alone cover the unfunded entitlements coming due in the next decade.
Well, let me put the question back to you, because you've driven us to the question. Do tax cuts pay for themselves? If so, how?
They don't. They don't. I mean, there's a great study, 2005, I think, study by Greg Mankiw, the legend in macroeconomics. I call him a legend because his stuff got me interested in this subject matter. Mm-hmm. And Greg was actually worked for the Bush 2 administration, great economist. And his paper and co-authors found that tax cuts could pay for between 15 and 32% of their initial cost. In other words, they don't pay for themselves. You could get a little bit of growth over the long run, over time, right? You get a little stimulus, over time, but and that helps make up for some of the lost tax revenue. But you can't get, I mean, best case scenario, you get maybe 1/3 of the losses back. Okay. And so you end up with higher deficits. Okay. And there's another great paper, 2014 paper that says the concluded tax cuts might not produce in any significant economic growth. And this is the extreme, the extreme paper that says, no, not whatsoever, because it results in higher debt. Yeah. Higher deficits and higher debt. We agree there. The CBO itself had this paper, the study that showed, 10% cut in the individual income tax could, result in 28%, could result in basically, recovering about 28% of the lost revenue, but would further increase deficits slightly due to the negative economic impact of higher deficits.
Yeah. So what does that mean? So if you're going to make it can't be tax cuts alone. So there has to be, what are the other mechanisms that have to come along with the tax?
If you're going to cut taxes and you don't want higher deficits, you're going to have to make some significant spending cuts at the same time.
Right.
And so that is kind of the economics. That's the math.
But isn't that what Stephen Miller's talking about? And isn't that in line with the DOGE concept? I mean, it's that like if the USAID is gone and gone forever, and we're never going to put another penny into that pocket, right? Have we not made a permanent cut for which we will never have to fund?
Look, DOGE is trimming around the edges, mate. We're not talking about Social Security.
Well, we better not be. I don't think.
What I'm saying, like Allison suggested, there are massive unfunded entitlements coming due in the next decade. And we got to seriously think about that, especially if you want your mortgage rates to come down.
That's certainly an important factor. And I mean, not just mortgage rates, but interest rates in general.
Exactly. And that's where we're at right now. And so that's why, as interesting, I think it's great that we're having these conversations. I think it's great to have more people in the mix talking about policy.
Right.
But we got to be very careful. And that's why I think, waiting, trying different things, but waiting, seeing what the impact is going to be before going out and throwing everything at the wall and waiting to see what happens. I think that's a dangerous way of doing policy. And so we got to be careful. We got to operate with surgical precision. We cannot be throwing things out there and hoping something will stick and hoping something will fix the problem. We got to go at it, carefully with really good research, if we want the outcome to be, the intended outcome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, surgical precision. Glad I'm working with a doctor. All right. Good stuff.
Pleasure.
Orphe, Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics wherever great podcasts are hosted, and make sure that you listen to Orphe and me every week on the Center Square Radio Hour.